Hey everybody, this is Perch. You've seen some pages probably shared around featuring Miles Morales and talking to his mother around LatinX and kind of talking to her about the word. I want to put it in some context here. It doesn't make it better, but it changes kind of the dialogue a slight bit. Some people are mentioning where this page is from. Other people are just sort of sharing around the page, which is what happens when you share around just a page. And there's, a lot of people get beat up on that. Like, you're not sharing this with context. It's like, yeah, but the page is still the page. So, I mean, we can worry about that if we want. But this page, a lot of people are thinking is coming from Miles Morales' Spider-Man comic. It is not. It's actually coming from the Marvel Voices Comunidades book that was out this week, that was released. This book is celebrating Latin and Latinx characters and creators. It's part of the Marvel Voices line. There's been several of them. The next one coming up is Marvel Voices Heritage, which is talking about indigenous Native American people. And it is, by the way, somebody told me Native American's not the word to use. Somebody will have to tell some of the tribe leaders that, because they still are using that. But and that kind of fits into what we're about to talk about with this Latinx situation. Anyway, that title has been delayed. And these are anthology books. This one's about 90 pages or so. The challenge with this is when you open the book, and I'm trying to be as just fair about this. A lot of people, they look at this, they immediately go, it's the voices, it's diversity, I hate it, it's trash. They like immediately write it off. Okay, but let's look at it. You got a nice cover by Joe Quesada. It's fine. He did not contribute inside the book, which would have been, I think, appropriate and good and a smart thing to do. But we'll leave that alone for the moment. The interesting piece here is that you get to an introduction. Introduction's fine. It's very much about heritage. Anyway, I won't go into that. The first story that comes out is called Just as Strange as You Do. And out the gate, the art is quite nice. This art team, this group, this is Terry Bloss, Julius Ota, doing the book, or doing the story. And colors are good. Art is good. Story is definitely like what we've seen from these other Marvel Voices books, and that they're really leaning into kind of the heritage, and I wonder how it will be. But it's not over the top. It's about a girl. She's going to go to Strange Academy. She's going to be a superhero. She's got a new costume. She's very confident what she does, but still, there's aspects to this that are, maybe the character is a little bit overconfident, but it's still, it's fine. The dialogue back and forth is good. It's talking about going to New Orleans, and we get this remarkable little story where, we're sewing a costume. We're meeting up with her guide for Strange Academy. We're walking through the streets. A monster attacks. They defeat the monster. They continue on to Strange Academy. In they go. There's no dinner scene in this. That's half of these stories feel like they're housed over food. But anyway, it's fine. It's a perfectly fine little story. As an introduction to a character, great. This is the new character I think they're putting into this. It's fine. This is not going to be the story you're going to remember for years to come. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's a perfectly good introduction. In the past, you would have seen this kind of story put into an annual, where they're introducing a new character that's going to then appear in the regular series. It has that feel to it. It's good. And again, they're not beating people over the head with any kind of nonsense, basically. The next story is also inherently okay. It's 1970, and you've got the White Tiger. The White Tiger's got to fight this trash monster, and there's basically the challenge with this, and this is really, I think, the challenge with the book, is here's where the editor should have come in before each story and provided some context, because unless you are reading very closely and you miss the little tiny caption on the first panel of the first page, you're wondering, wait a minute, I thought White Tiger was a woman, and suddenly there's this like, what is going on here? It doesn't fit. It's confusing as to what's happening, particularly when a couple pages later, literally 2 pages later, you get another story with White Tiger set in today, who is the woman, and you're like, wait a minute, what happened here? We also get throughout this entire comic several one-page little things about people cooking, which starts to feel, as you're getting more close to it, like they're not leaning into the heritage as much as they wanted to have superheroes cooking food. Like it starts to when you get like the tortilla story for the third or fourth time, you start to question, who was involved in making this book. So it starts to feel like it was people who are not Hispanic, but people who are thinking what Hispanic people might like. That's how it starts to feel. Now, this book was put together by Hispanic people, but it does start to feel it. And that brings us to the story that I wanted to cover here. And so you have this is Miles Morales, Spider-Man, whose his heritage is he's half Hispanic. He meets up with Spider-Girl here. And they basically learn, after he just hint of a robber that is foiled in a couple panels, they learn that there's going to be a demonstration march for immigration rights. And they immediately say, hey, let's go for a demonstration. And what's funny is that they both have secret identities. In theory, they're wearing masks. But they're like, we're going to go for a demonstration. When you see them at the demonstration like 3 pages later, it's there's not a huge demonstration. There's like 20 people. Basically, they reveal their secret identities. They have their masks off, but she's wearing the same ponytail. And I mean, like, who else is it going to be? So anyway, that's not what people are complaining about. What people are complaining about is midway through the story, it segues into a bizarre PSA. And the PSA begins with Miles's mother saying, hey, Anya, what does that mean? I'm going to have to just read it to you. Hey, Anya, what does that mean, LatinX? I've heard the term thrown around lately, but I've never had the opportunity to really ask about it. Oh, says Anya, Spider-Girl. LatinX is a more inclusive way to refer to people, rather than Latino or Latina. Inclusive, huh? What's wrong with Latino and Latina? Weren't those working just fine until now? And they even drawn her in the PSA, kind of holding her chin. Well, the thing about LatinX is that it's an all-encompassing term and doesn't assume anyone's gender, the way that Spanish usually does. Latina may be fine, or be working just fine for people like us who identify as female, but for those who are gender non-conforming, or identify as non-binary or gender fluid, the forced gendering of Latino and Latina can be really tricky to deal with. Mom says, okay, I hear what you're saying, but isn't it a little too late to be changing the rules of a language? People have spoken Spanish all over Latin America and Spain for hundreds of years. Is everyone supposed to change the way they speak now? Miles says, I don't think anyone is saying you have to start saying Latinx, Mom. I don't know about that. But we all know that language can be messy, right? Like, remember the time we were at your work Christmas party and that really nice Venezuelan lady asked me to bring some chairs inside? She said she wanted me to do it ahorita, but then got annoyed with me not doing it the right way. Because to us, ahorita means later, but to her it means right now. Oh, God, that situation was a bit of a mess, says Miles' mom. So maybe language should be adapted when it monies up something as important as someone's personal identity. Anya says, in all seriousness, no, it wasn't that long ago that people referred to my Mexican grandparents as Spanish just because they spoke the same language as their colonializers. My grandfather hated that. Yeah. And before Latino, they just called us Hispanic, which never felt quite right for me personally either. But on the other hand, I know a lot of people who prefer the term Hispanic. Miles says, I think it's about figuring out what works best for you and respecting what works best for other people. Right, Anya? Yep, that's pretty much what I'm getting at. Okay, one more question. Does Latinx even translate to Spanish? Because I think that's probably a pretty important part of all this, right? Of course. The term was actually developed by the LGBTQ people in Latin America, so it definitely translates. Latin is another inclusive alternative term that's gaining steam lately, though Latinx is still the most accepted term at the moment. But ultimately, you should just use whatever term feels more comfortable for you and those around you. It's not a huge deal. All right, so we'll pause there. It goes on, they go into the rally, and she says, yeah, you've left me with a lot to think about. Fine. The challenge here is one, what the hell am I even reading here? This is a PSA, absolutely. The challenge here is that, those arguments we've had on this channel, other places about do comics have an agenda, and we've split hairs about what the word agenda means and exactly how people are using it and other things. This, though, is a clear cut and dry. I mean, this is an agenda. This is absolutely an agenda. The agenda taking place is that the makers of this comic are trying to promote the word because, and we'll get into it here in a second, but it doesn't align with any data from any source, including left-leaning sources, about what the community is actually calling itself, what Hispanics prefer. It is pushing a term, and it's pushing a term to 3 to 4%. Yes, for those of you who have been waiting for this moment, yes, this is absolutely an agenda. I still maintain, we can argue about it another time, there's a lot of stupidity, and people often mistake stupidity for an agenda. Somebody said stupidity is an agenda. I mean, okay. I mean, again, we can chase that down the rabbit hole. But if just being specific, case by case, yes, this is absolutely an agenda. There you go. Crazy moment.
What comic books are you reading?
I mean, it's a very strange bit of comic. Now, it's meant to inform, I guess, but I have many questions. One, if you're wanting to put your best foot forward in terms of introducing these characters, is 4 pages of them kind of lecturing / teaching the mom about using these terms really the way to go? And then if you are going to do that, do you think you want to be accurate? So I'm looking right now at an article on CNN, as everyone knows, the alt-right CNN site. And this is from 3 months ago. 4 months ago. And the headline, just 4% of Hispanic or Latino people prefer the term Latinx, new Gallup poll found. And it goes on to say, Gallup found that only 4% of Hispanic and Latino Americans prefer Latinx, a gender-neutral signifier has gained popularity in some circles, mainly online, in recent years. The contrast, the poll, released Wednesday, found that 15% prefer Latino, while 23% prefer Hispanic. And this next paragraph does kind of dial that back a little bit by saying, but most don't really have a preference, the poll found, with 57% reporting it does not matter. If they had to choose, the most respondents said Hispanic, a team that directly signifies being of Spanish-speaking origin. Latino, on the other hand, is less specific, referring instead to Latin America as a whole. Okay. So they're saying researchers found that only 1 in 4 Hispanic or Latino adults had even heard of the term Latinx, and only 3% of them used it to describe themselves. So when you say Latinx is still the most accepted term at the moment, that's wildly mistrue. Like, not even a little mistrue. It's just factually wildly mistrue. And if you're going to do this, you could do whatever you want. But this then starts to change it from a PSA into trying to push a particular, one place where Latinx is definitely more powerful, more popular, is with very loud people on Twitter, which, oddly enough, still make up 5% or less of the users on Twitter. It's just that they post the most and they scream the most. And so when you get to this line, I think that I can agree with, I can sign on to this. You should ultimately just use whatever term feels more comfortable for you and those around you. It's not a huge deal. Yeah, probably true. +1. I agree. The challenge is it's not that way. And that's kind of what's goofy about this kind of weird, record scratch moment in the comic, is because people are not saying it's okay to use whatever you want. I've seen people on Twitter lose their shit at people who say Latino and Hispanic. I mean, again, God help you if you say Hispanic. And by phrasing it here of saying, Hispanic never felt quite right for me personally either. And yet, by the actual numbers of Hispanic people, that is the term they prefer. So it is, it basically Spanish, hate, Hispanic, no, Latino, not inclusive. It's really beating you over head with this. And so the comic goes on, and we get a America Chavez story, which is, there's a brief little fight. The problem with all these anthologies is you get tiny little moments of fighting. God, here's another tortilla story. Why every time? Why so many one-page tortilla stories? I don't understand. But anyway, you get and then there's a completely eye-rolling, painful Robbie Reese ghostwriter story where he goes down into the subway and there's a bunch of angry, you know, army-looking guys who got camo pants and red shirts and red hats that say H8 or hate, and they're just basically kicking over Hispanic people's stuff and saying, "You don't speak no English. Get out of my country. This is our land." And everybody's like, "Oh, you got to just nobody ever does anything about this. You got to just leave them alone because they post up their stuff to hate Chan. I love hate Chan." And then they have a bunch of people liking, with screen names like Smoked Alaska, Thunder, Infamous Man, and White Power, and they're all using the OK symbol emoji. It's like we're still pushing that. The challenge is by the time you get through this, the comic, which does have a couple good stories in it, it absolutely does. There is from the Sword comic, you have Risk, and that's a pretty nice little story doing some things, some sci-fi stuff. There are some okay, decent things here. And I think the goal here is, in theory, to introduce people to Hispanic characters in the Marvel Universe and to give them some more prominence. And I think that's a reasonably good goal. It's not a bad thing to do at all. Unfortunately, there's by the way, a nice one. There's another Miles Morales story where he runs into Black Panther, and Black Panther gives him a little a little thing that can change his costume. And so he gets a, kind of his costume, but it's themed with a Puerto Rico flag on it. And it's not, that's actually, I look at that, I'm like, well, they should have gone with this costume. This costume looks better than some of what they've done. But it's weird. This comic has an opportunity, I think, to introduce a lot of people to some cool characters, to get them over and to get more of a following behind them. Instead, it takes weird detours where we're just wanting to push LatinX for just no apparent reason, continue to beat the drum over making tortillas, and then just this very thinly veiled Trump supporter people just screaming at kids in the subway for hate Chan is like, only a complete idiot reads this and thinks this is reflective of anything. So the problem is, if you're actually wanting to introduce real concepts to people, what people are really struggling with, but you do it in such a cartoonishly stupid way, you don't get, you basically, people ignore the whole thing. And I think no matter what your purpose is to get over these characters, promote them, that's what I mean by get over, to promote them, to make them bigger. It fails on that count. And if your goal is to, actually bring up some important topics for people to think about, when you do it in this cartoonishly stupid way that is really built for Twitter. I mean, this is written as if it was going to be in a Twitter thread and not anything that's going to actually change any hearts and minds. So it is a shame, because when you read and I took the time, I read the passages, I read the little, the text here from the people who contributed some little essays and other things. And they, they want to do something meaningful here. I do believe in that there's some passion here. They're trying to, put some stuff out here, but then done this way, it becomes forgettable. That's the problem. It does not create richer, strong Hispanic stories. It creates, it creates eye-rolling PSAs. So which again feels like a real shame to me. But anyway, and then some editor should have said, like, look, for some of these one-page food stories, they can't all be tortilla based. Like, you gotta mix it up. There's one that does something else, but I don't know. I don't what's even going on. Anyway, thought I'd give you some context to this thing. I don't know that context makes anything better. I'm not trying to make anything better. Just that's a little bit what's going on here. I know I'm in the minority of the people probably who listen to this that say, I think that this idea here of doing these kinds of stories is not a bad one. It's just the execution has been so poor that it's not accomplishing really any of the goals it sets out to do. But it's not a terrible idea to give some of these lesser known characters some bigger focus and prominence and bring them in. It's a noble effort. It just I don't know. I will I will wait for this time next year when they do the Comunidades #2 and we see White Tiger again, because I'm pretty sure like that's the next time we're going to see her. So, maybe 3 or 4 years we'll see the 1970s version again. So that cool win. Anyway, 4% LatinX. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just showing you data. Thanks for listening.